Where do we find you at the moment, project-wise, current and recent projects, remixing, original artist stuff? Where are you at the moment with what you can tell us that's not a secret?
I'm trying to sort of create a balance. I mean, I'll give you a bit of my background history. Like I produced drum and bass music for about 15 years, and it was all basically original music, like original artist songs, where you might take a snippet of a sample of something, but I often recorded vocalists like MCs, singers, um, and when I switched to Dr. Pack around 2013, it was sort of intended to be a bit of fun, like and really, I set out to just remix and do edits, bootlegs, remixes, and it was all sort of tailored for my sets. Really, like I just wanted to make music that I loved from years ago: soul, funk, disco, hip hop, reggae, whatever. I've been influenced by so much music over the years, and then I just added my production to it, and then I was able to reintroduce it into my sets again. So it was really started off as a personal thing, and then of course you get people asking you for copies. Then you get labels saying, "Can we sign and release it?" And the first couple of years, it was a little bit naughty. They were sort of like bootlegs with name adjustments, but I got out of that fairly quickly. Like after a couple of years, I sort of moved away from that and went legit and worked with labels such as Salsoul, for example. So working on original disco tunes and being able to release them, officially and above board. But of course, over time, around about the COVID period where we had a lot more time on our hands because there was less gigs, I was getting a little bit sort of getting to that point where I wanted something different. I was doing too much of the same old thing, warping stuff, like editing stuff, overdubs.
Yeah.
I'm still working from multi tracks occasionally as well when I had them, of course. But I just sort of thought, you know what, I want to try an original, and so I did one like the way I used to produce drum and bass, and that track was called "Get Some Soul," and it was basically a loop, but there was no verses, no choruses, pretty much no samples. It was all bass line was all created from scratch. The chords were created from scratch. I got a keyboard player in to do a solo, and it was a nice little. And that was my sort of introduction and to an original track, and I've done like a few since then. I mean, over 10 years, I've probably still only done about five original Dr. Packer productions. I'd say like I'd done two with the singer who was at the gig you came to at Downtown Disco, and that's Suki
Suki,
Soul.
Suki, yeah.
So I did two originals with her as well, and then a couple of other bits and pieces. So really, I just do. I'm trying to sort of create a balance between the covers. Like my latest track's a cover of Candy Statton's "You Got the Love," latest release. Shameless plug. um, but and then so I've got the covers there, I've got the originals, and I've got obviously the reworks and the re-edits. And thankfully, down to you and the Mastermix crew, I'm able to now revisit my body of work, and trust me, there's hundreds of them. And then I'll look at sort of like I remember what was good, remember what worked in my sets, or remember
Yeah.
what I was getting hassled for, and
Hmm.
I'll go, oh, that'd be a good one to put on Mastermix because I remember a lot of people wanted that. And so yeah, but there's still plenty coming out this year.
What's the Dr. Packer journey of music tech then through your, those early days through different computers, softwares, hardware, and software, Greg?
I think when I started out, it was an Akai S2000 sampler, a MIDI controller, just an old bloody PC, cheap pair of monitors,
Yeah.
and I had to even buy an external CD burner
Wow.
with a SCSI cable, and
I
that was the
remember
only
SCSI.
way. Yeah, when we finished the track, I also must mention the mixing desk. Um,
Mm.
so when we finished the track, we had to burn it to CD, and the speed time. I remember it was like 2 times or 4 times. You sit there for ages
I
waiting for the disc
know
to
the
burn.
pain, the pain.
But I'd be doing it, but I'd be so excited, thinking like knowing I had a gig that night, and then when it eject that disc, and I'd be like, right, I've got it, like that. And it was almost like that was my dub plate,
Yeah,
And
that's
I was
it.
just
Yeah.
itching to go and test it in the nightclub to and it was a great feeling, like people not knowing the tune and then just watching how they respond to it when it drops and the bass line comes in and all that kind of stuff. And especially when the occasional time where you hit the nail on the head and you get a really good response from it, that's just the best feeling ever.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But yeah, so I did get the tail end of the whole hardware thing, and I was a bit. I remember being frustrated by around about 2000. I think it must be about 2001 maybe. So I had a couple of years like producing, and everyone was selling all their gear. All my colleagues, all my friends were like selling all their synthesizers and their hardware, and they were going, no, it's all going software now. Everything's software. You can do it all within your computer. And I was like, I don't want it to go like that. I like playing with my sampler, and I've got my head round it now. I'm used to working
Yeah.
this way. And I remember dragging it out. I remember everyone was moving into software, and I went another 2 or 3 years going, bugger this. I'm just going to carry on doing it the way I know how to do it, because
Yeah.
I'm getting results. And the funny thing was, I was 29, so I wasn't. I was close to being 30, and I sort of felt my stuff was starting to be as good as what I was hearing. Like, so I was working in a record shop, so what was coming in on import, I was starting to sort of say, I think my stuff's as good as this now. So I'm going to, and in those days, again, this was before I even had an email address. So I'd look at the back of the records and just write down the actual address on the back of the artwork, and then physically post them a CD, with a note and my contact and everything like that. So I remember, I don't know, no one really suggested this to me. It was my own idea, but I just went, right, I'm going to burn 30 CDs and send them to 30 labels.
Okay.
Surely one of those labels is going to be interested in this track.
Right.
I had to stop doing it in the end because certain labels were fighting over the tracks. So you get, say, like 3 or 4 that wanted it, and it was
my
like,
goodness.
sorry, I've given it to this label, and then they get. And so I was like, I had to pull it. But in the beginning, I'd sent those 30 CDs out, and I waited and waited and waited. And then I got a response from an American record label called Hard Leaders, and they said, we love your track. Thanks for sending it. We'd like to release it. And I was like, oh, wow. And I remember the postman, he sent me a test press of it, because that's what they did. They sent the artist a test press. He chucked it on the decks and said whether he was happy with how it sounded or not. Well, that test press came 3 weeks before my 30th birthday. And I remember saying, because I had to borrow the money off my parents to set the studio up because it wasn't cheap. And then I remember showing them the test press, and I was in 3 weeks' time, I was turning 30. And I said, what did I say? If I'm not holding a piece of vinyl by the time I hit 30, I'm out.
Wow.
And then like 3 weeks before 30, I was like, here it is in my hand. And I chucked it on the decks, and that was it then.
So regarding remixes, and I'm not talking about stuff that, projects that you've been commissioned for by a label, for example. So how you choose, what the criteria that emotionally make you think I want to do this, and then just the basic process of, blank DAW page to finished product.
Yeah, I think, speaking about when I was still a drum and bass DJ, I used to, the transition to Dr. Packer came about when a friend of mine, he had to leave Perth urgently on some sort of family crisis. And he gave me his residency in a beach bar. And I said, what are you playing there? Because I can't play drum and bass. He goes, I'll play funk, soul, disco, house, whatever you want. So
yeah,
I was playing all that stuff. And then I had a friend of mine who used to do these parties called Boogaloo, and it was all old school funk, soul, hip hop. And I'd go down there with my vinyl, and I would have experience in playing these records to a crowd. So when I started doing the Dr. Packer stuff, when I choose my own thing, I was often referencing those records that I played where I knew were getting the biggest reactions. So certain tunes, I remember playing like George Duke, Reach Out, and every time I dropped that, the crowd would go mad, but I was playing the vinyl. And I was thinking, well, that's a no-brainer. I've got to do that, and me and my friend, we were mad. We were obsessed with that 80s soul and funk stuff, like the D Train and, all that kind of real slamming, kind of like boogie funk sort of stuff. And we would, every time we had a gig, we'd pull different records out, and we would remember which records at the end of the night. We'd go, oh, that tune smashed it, and this one killed it, So when I sort of like go back to those times, I'd sort of like zone into, what tunes were really doing the business on the dance floor, like, and I'll see what's connecting with them. And I used to, I'm giving away a bit of a secret now, but you familiar with the Case the Soul Weekenders?
Yes,
that they do over there.
Yeah.
So I used to watch their videos, probably anywhere like 12 to 15 years ago, maybe. And I used to watch their videos, and I would see what tunes the DJs were playing and seeing what tunes the crowd were really going mad for, like hands in the air moments, just going crazy,
Yeah.
And I'd often sort of, when I started doing the Dr. Pack, I was like, I'm going to go watch some of those videos again, because I remember there were some really big tunes that those DJs were playing and the crowd were going absolutely mad to. And then I'd make a list. I mean, as I speak to you right now, there's a pile of records down by my knee, about this big, and that's my to-do list. And these are all tunes like that at some point in my life I've remembered. I've gone, I either played that and it worked, or I saw that on a Case video or somewhere, like when I was out and about. I mean, don't forget, I've been at the Glitterbox parties, and I've seen Dimitri from Paris and all these old DJs that I grew up listening to. I've witnessed them playing. Obviously, if they drop something in the middle of their set and it was a real moment, that sticks with me. And maybe 4 or 5 years later, I'll go, oh, remember when he played that? Yeah, that really went off like that. And I'm sort of thinking, maybe I should do that.
Greg Packer, touring DJ, UK and Europe. You've been doing this for quite a number of years. So I've got to ask the atypical question. Favourite cities, favourite crowds, some moments that you can recall, great receptions to attract, good memories and good vibes from recent years when you've been touring in the UK and Europe, Greg.
Yeah, so like Downtown Disco Leeds, I've played pretty much every trip, and always an amazing vibe. London, I always find is a great place to play disco and soul and funk.
Yeah.
One Hoochie Coochie up in Newcastle. I've done that. I'm doing that again this year. That's always like anything like if I'm playing to that kind of older crowd that get the old tunes. I'm happy. I mean, obviously I've done the Glitterbox thing as well. Played at like Ministry Sound and done the High Ibiza. So I've done like the bigger parties as well. I mean, I've got great memories of the last 10 years doing Dr. Packer. There's been some amazing gigs. Probably better gigs than I've ever done as drum and bass. Playing Greg Packer's drum and bass, should I say?
Yeah.
It's all pretty positive. It's very rare that I come over to the UK and do a dub gig. Like the vibes, I've got a pretty good following there, and the right people tend to turn up to the show.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's such an incredible feeling, isn't it, Greg, to receive a rapturous response to one of your own works, isn't it? It's wonderful.
Yeah. And often I get surprised myself. Like, I'll be on the plane coming over there and I'll be going through the music and I'll be going, this tune's going to smash it. That's going to smash it. That's going to smash it. When I get there, put it into practice, it's not always the way.
Really? Interesting.
sometimes there'll be a hidden tune that I didn't think would smash it, and I might be halfway through my set and I go, I'll give that a try, and just get a mad reaction from it, and then that ends up being like a trump card in every one of my sets for the rest of the tour.
Wow. Yeah.
I've had that happen before.
Can imagine as
And
well, and in a way, you're kind of A&R in your own tracks, because you might think, oh, I was playing, in Newcastle, and that 32 bar section. Do you know, I need to go back and revisit that. Is a bit of that go on as well, Greg?
Yeah, sure. I've made something, say, for 2022 or 2023, and I hardly played it, and then I'll come back here, maybe do a gig over East, and play it and get a mad reaction, and I'll go, oh, why didn't I play that in the UK? So then I'll go, I'll tell you what, I'm going to hold on to this. This isn't coming out. I'm going to go with this next year, and then I'll wait, and I'll go, when the tour comes around again, I'll start playing it, and it ends up becoming, a big tune that year. But I would have made it, a year previous.
That's wonderful, though, isn't it? That's great, really.
That's the whole thing of being a DJ, and you can never really pick it.